which will have children, and those children are going to be, well, let's first create a linear progress indicator like this. And once we save that, you can see that somewhere at the top there is some sort of a linear progress indicator displayed, but we of course want to center it. So on this column we're going to define the main axis alignment, which in the case of a column is of course vertical. That's the main axis of the column. And we're going to say that this alignment is going to be main axis alignment dot center. And just like that, this linear progress indicator, which is indeterminate because we have not provided any value to it, it's null by default, is now going to be centered. You can also provide some sort of a value to it, like for example 0.5, in which case it's gonna become a determinate progress indicator, right? 0.2, 0.9. But if you just want to run it continuously, you don't define any value, and then it's just going to be running forever and ever. But we want to sort of offset this progress indicator from taking up the whole width of the screen to being a bit padded from the sides. So let's actually provide a padding to the whole column. So let's wrap it with padding. And again, we're just using
constant. Okay.
Command dot or control dot to show this context menu. And the padding is not going to be edge insets all size 8 logical pixels, but we want to have the padding only from the left and from the right of the screen. So that means we want to have the horizontal padding, and to define padding only horizontally, we're going to use edge insets symmetrical, or symmetric only, and this symmetric constructor takes in horizontal and vertical values. So we want to specify horizontal, and let's set it to 48 logical pixels, and now it immediately looks much better when it's padded by 48 pixels from the left and 48 pixels from the right. For being a splash page, this looks quite good even now, but really this is a repo viewer application dealing with GitHub, so we should probably show the GitHub logo even on a splash page. Now there are multiple ways to show a GitHub logo. If you have some not so much common logo that you want to show, you need to add your own image to the app as an asset and show it like that. You are going to learn how to add an asset image to your app and show it, but only later on, because when it comes to the GitHub logo, this is so widely known and widespread that we can actually show it as an icon. And for predefined icons,
那键应该有 GitHub。
we do not need to show a regular image, but instead we can use the icon widget, and this icon widget takes in icon data like this. And there are certain icons which are predefined and that come bundled with Flutter itself. For them we can use the icons object and get, for example, icons AC unit and display an AC unit, and we would be able to set the size of this icon to 150 logical pixels. It would look like this. And then there is icons dot, I don't know, account box, which looks like this. These icons, which come bundled with Flutter by default, are the material icons, and they are present here because in pub/spec/YAML we have specified under Flutter that it uses material design. So enabling this to true adds the icons class that we can then use it from our splash page, for example, to show this kind of an account box icon. But when it comes to GitHub, GitHub is not included in these default material icons, but we can instead use a custom third-party icon pack or icon package that has the GitHub icon inside of it. So let's do just that. We're gonna go to pub/spec/YAML, and just like with all of the other packages, we're gonna now add a package which is called Material Design Icons Flutter. Let's actually search for it on pub.dev. So Material Design Icons Flutter, and it's right over here.
Flutter 字把它复制下来，用 Command-Shift-P， pub/spec add the dependencies， 加这个，我自己加上去了，重新抓新的 package。
Here, and as you can see, it's the Material Design Icons icon pack available as a set of Flutter icons. So if you're not aware of it, there is this Material Design Icons community icon pack, which has its own website, and it's really cool because this is a community icon pack which is using the material design language, and it contains, as you can see, really a lot of different icons. I mean, really a lot of them, and all of these icons are available in this Flutter package. So if we add it, we need to use the pre-release because this is the null safety version and we want to use null safety in our app. So let's copy it. Link to it will also be in the lesson notes, and we can now use it as just any kind of other package in our pub/spec/YAML. So let's save the pub/spec/YAML, and once it's saved, we can now go back to our splash page, and to use the icons from that package, we're going to say mdi icons, and the icon we want to use is GitHub, like this. But the issue is that currently this icon is not yet loaded inside of our app, because what we've done by including this new package for the material design icons is that behind
OK， 这个才合理，因为我刚刚在想加了这个 package， 如果我们 APK 要变大，只为了用里面一个 icon，
the
并不划
scenes,
算。
this package adds a new file which needs to be bundled into the app as it's installed on the device, or on the simulator in this case. But when the app is already running, that new file which contains all of the icons cannot be bundled into the application package while it's installed. So we need to completely stop the app from running.
recursive. 怎样可以 recursive 啊？新点 APK。确定哪一个？3个都列出来看一下，这样可以用 GDU 吧。55 mega。55、54、55 ，OK。等下再看变大多少。所以要把程式停掉。
And restart it completely anew. So let's just go back to the
专门启动。看一下。重新 assemble 组装点 APK。再跑一次 GDU。哇，15到快85，加了快30 mega。加上去。MDI icons 点 GitHub， 不是这样写吗
the splash page and just hit F5.
直接带 icon 就可以了。然后这个要汇入 size 150，习惯点0了因为它的型别就是 double 嘛。重新打开，跑出来了。
Again. And once that's done, we are going to see the GitHub icon in the splash page. And here we go. We can see the GitHub icon and also the loading indicator. But let's sort of optimize this code because you can see that the icon can be made constant and also this linear progress indicator can be constant. And since they are all inside a single list of widgets, which are the children of column, this whole list can be constant. And then we also want to space out this icon apart from this linear progress indicator a bit. So let's do it with a sized box. And its height will be 16 pixels. Now we have the splash page done, but it's not enough to have the splash page because we also need to, from somewhere, as soon as the app starts, call the method present on our auth notifier called check and update auth status. And then once this method finishes,
整个秀这个 splash page 的目的是为了把一些初始的工作在这个 splash page 的背后把它做完，就是那些工作做完以前，我们程式不能正常开启嘛，所以才是用这个可以想象成是我们程式的遮羞板，就被 launch 起来的时候其实还没有 ready， 先用这一块把自己遮着，然后在背后赶快把该处理的事情处理完。
its execution, and the state is either updated to authenticate it.
那到目前为止，我们唯一需要做的就是检查是否已经登录了，检查这个状态，因为它是一个非同步，所以需要一点时间去做。
Or to unauthenticate it, we will then want to navigate away from this splash page into either the sign-in page or the start repositories page. So let's do that initial check for authenticated state, and we are going to do that from nowhere else than the app widget.
从 app widget 来做这件事情。想一下这个 code 其实可以打开全萤幕吧。app widget 要从这里来做。好，这一课先这样就结束了，应该没什么问题。相对简单的一课。
How can we go about calling the auth notifiers check and update auth status method when the app is launched? Well, the easiest option would be to make this app widget a stateful widget, which we can do with a context menu like this. And then we would add an init state method, right? Init state, and just get the auth notifier in the init state method from its provider, which is right over here inside of shared providers.dart in the auth feature, and then on this auth
这段比较深，我再听一次。他在讲一种取得 auth 状态的方法。
The auth notifiers check and update auth status method when the app is launched. Well, the easiest option would be to make this app widget a stateful widget, which we can do with a context menu like this. And
OK， 当你有一个状态要改变的时候呢，原本这个 widget 是 status， 这个跳的好讨厌啊！这能不能有个 delay 呀、设定 vs call， 然后它是什么 definition delay 哦 ，delay for definition or declaration。Too soon. How to change the delay parameter hint. Hover delay. Okay, editor hover delay. Hover delay. 300实在是有点快哦，很多时候并不需要。我先把它改成加1倍600，看看。你确定这个 Workbench control the hover feedback delay millisecond of dragging hover delay control delay millisecond which hover is shown。我觉得是这个，但是很快啊。我猜我要找的东西是这个，还是让它改300？我要找的东西比较像是什么什么 delay。Quick suggestion， 直接可以加2个，你看你会怎样？不是。VS Code 跳这个，这应该是 declaration 吧 ？Delay show declaration IntelliSense Quick Suggestion Delay。感觉就是 IntelliSense 没有错。Generic term for， 但又不完全是。IntelliSense 查一下有什么设定可以改。没有。所以不，只能先这样，因为这个真的很烦。回到刚才要讲的，就是这个 widget 现在是没有状态的。如果你要让它变成有状态，就是改成 stateful widget。改的方法 command 点 convert to， 现在的编辑器都很方便，它就自己帮你这样子变成是 stateful。然后那些状态呢，比如说它是一个不领值的话，那个状态就可以放在这里。说启动是否完成啊，然后这个值一旦改变了，这个 app 就会重新呼叫一次 build， 重 build， 就能够反映最新的状态。
Then we would add an init state method, right? Init state。
它的是比较严谨，就是那个状态是在 init state 这里去初始化的。比如说我们写这个，再晚一点再启动嘛，然后这边就。
And just get the auth notifier in the init state method from its provider, which is right.
它要去取得 auth state 从 provider。这里头哪里有 provider？ provider scope providers 点 data。Flutter Secure Storage Provider auth Notify Provider 吧
right over here inside of shared providers.dart in the auth feature, and then on this auth notifier we would call the method. This is possible.
auth Notifier 呼叫这个去 new 一个 auth Notify Provider.
But as you might imagine, Checking the authentication status is not the only thing we are gonna be doing when the app starts. There are gonna be a bunch of more initialization steps, like for example, once we have a local database for the repo cache, we're gonna need to initialize that database when the app starts. And while performing these kinds of initial configurations and calls from init state of the root widget of our app is not a bad idea, we can do better since we are using Riverpod. So let's just hit Ctrl and Z a bunch of times, or Command.
OK， 那这里其实是要做恢复。OK， 恢复到 stateless。
Z on Mac. And we're going to do this in a different way. So, what we are gonna do is that we're gonna create an initialization provider right here inside of the appwidget.dart file, because as you remember, you can put providers anywhere when you are working with Riverpod. So final initialization provider, and this is going to be equal to a special type of provider, which is a future provider. And this future provider takes in a function again, which passes us a reference, and this is going to be asynchronous. We are using a future provider here because some of the initialization steps may be asynchronous, so we might want to use the await keyword with them. And future providers work much like regular providers. They can provide you with an object, but that object may come asynchronously in the future.
这边想要帮可能不熟 provider 的朋友补充一下，provider 本身从字面上就可以理解到，它提供一个东西给你。那提供一个东西可以解决的问题就是dependency 的问题，就是我们的程式里面 A 物件通常会 depend on B 物件 ，B 物件可能又 depend on C 物件。那你用的时候有可能是用 A， 有可能是用 B， 有可能是用 C。那你分别帮 A、B、C 都写了 provider 之后，我们现在直接看例子 providers。看一下有没有什么好例子。这里这个例子应该就不错。OS Notifier Provider， 它会需要一个叫做 GitHub Authenticator 的 Provider，OK。而这个 GitHub Authenticator Provider 呢，它本身又需要另外两个物件。那怎么取得那个物件？一样用 Provider。它需要一个 DIO provider， 那 DIO provider 在写在上面嘛，人家来要的时候，我就 new 一个 DIO 给他，然后还需要一个 credential storage provider。为什么这会分两段呢？奇怪。OK， 然后这个物件 provider， 这是我在。知道，对，因为这里在搜寻嘛，对。这个物件本身又需要另外一个 Flutter Secure Storage Provider， 这个 provider 在上面，就是它们的 dependency 是形成一个，该说是树状结构嘛。这个是树状结构，但是它有可能会形成一个 graph。有回圈的，有回圈应该会有问题。目前我们看到的是一个树状结构，就是 dependency 的 tree。所以，它现在要做一个是启动这个 app 的状态的 provider 嘛，就把一个状态提供出来，看有谁需要。这个需要的人应该是 splash page 嘛，因为我们现在把启动的状态藏在这个 page 后面的，所以这个 page 需要知道启动的状态完成了没。
with the future type. However, we are not going to be using this future provider to really provide anything. When we are using providers here for the authentication feature, we really do use every provider over here to simply provide an object, whether it's Flutter Secure Storage or even if it is an auth notifier. We always provide a single object using a provider. With this initialization provider, the story is a bit different though. We will not provide anything. We're just going to perform initialization here as if this was a regular method. We're gonna be adding a bunch of more initialization steps here in the future, but for now, all we want to do here is to read the auth notifier provider. So let's say ref.read. We do not want to say watch, but we say only read, because we do not want this initialization provider to run multiple times whenever these watched providers change. Our providers are not going to change anyway, but if you watch a provider,
watch 跟 read 的差别。Obtain the state of a provider and cause the state to be reevaluated, and the provider aims at new value. Supporting the scenario. OK， 它整个 dependency tree 是可以被更新的。看可以回到这里。复制一下。OK。ABC。实际上图方向应该是反过来，反过来，不行。反过来画。被 A 所需要。然后 B 被另外一个应该是所需要。B 如果跟 D 如果有更新，那这一路都会更新。应该是 watch 的意思吧。Provider read another provider 就应该要 watch。然后 read 的话是只要读一次就好。Read the state associated with the provider without listening to that provider. Calling read instead of watch, it will not cause the provider state to be created。好，大概知道。
And it changes, then this initialization provider would run once again. But we do not want that to happen. We want the initialization to happen only once. That's why we're going to only read these providers. And well, we want to read auth notifier provider. But this would read the state of the auth notifier provider, so we actually want to say .notifier to read the actual auth notifier. Now let's put this into final auth notifier. And let's just call await auth notifier check and update auth status. And now when this initialization provider is run, we're going to check for the auth status. But how do we make this initialization provider run? We cannot just call a provider and say run now. The way that providers work is that when they are used, they run. And when we are talking about Flutter,
写出来，名字但名字有点长，短一点。Reference read auth notifier provider notifier stay.
Flutter, when providers are no longer used, they don't run, and they actually are usually disposed. And to use this initialization provider so that it runs as soon as the app starts and this app widget is first built, well, we are going to create something called a provider listener here. Now in the future this is going to change. You are not going to create any sort of a widget in the widget tree. Instead, you are going to change the type of this app widget to be a consumer widget. And then this build method will take widget reference, ref, and you are going to call ref.listen. And you will want to listen for the initialization provider, and you're just going to listen with an empty callback because it doesn't matter what this initialization provider does, what it outputs. We don't actually want it to output anything. We only care about that this initialization.
OK， 他这里写的应该是之后，因为 riverpath provider 是从 riverpath 这个 package 来的。riverpath 在他讲的时候还在建构，就是还在正式版 1.0 版还没出来，所以还在开发中。所以这是他理想中之后 1.0 版完成以后，他希望可以这样用。那现在还不行，看一下现在要怎么用。
Once and that's it. So this is the code you will write. But as of now, unfortunately, this new version is still not out yet, and it's been in the works for quite some time. So we'll just revert back to the stateless widget without the widget reference and all this stuff. And as for me, I'm going to wrap this whole material app in a widget, which is going to be called provider listener. And I will provide it with a provider, which is the initialization provider. And this also takes in an onChange function, which provides us with a context and value. And again, I'm not going to do anything on change. The only reason why we are listening to the initialization provider is that so it runs. Also, we get this blue squiggly line under this nested function. saying that the type of the function literal can be inferred, so we should try adding an explicit type to the variable. Since we do not want to return anything from this future provider, let's specify
void
unit from the darts
unit
package, just for good measure. Let's import darts, and let's also return unit.
OK， 这边这一个 solution 有点丑，但是那为了解决的是说 app 起来的时候有几个非同步的function需要去完成，这些function呼叫可能会花一些时间，所以它的解法是用它希望把它整个套到 provider 这个 pattern 里面去，所以它的解法是做了一个 future provider。那它吃一个 async function， 里面 async function 嘛，所以你就可以去做你想做的非同步的事情，不管这里花多久都可以，你就去做。刚刚那个怎么突然变大？所以，OK， 然后怎么样把它让去？怎么样把这个 provider 跑起来？只要有人去读这个 provider 就可以了。那回传值不重要，我们这里直接改一下吧，因为 provider future provider 它希望能够吃那个，希望可以吃一个 type， 所以我们给它一个 type 叫做 unit， 这个是从dart z 就是 functional programming 的一个 dart z 这个 package 来的，你就把它想成是 void 就好了 ，void， 所以因为你有一个 type， 所以要回传这个 type， 就回传小写的 unit。为什么是大写小写？这里先不研究。然后为了呼叫这个 provider， 它把它包在一个叫做什么 provider， 把它包在一个 provider listener， 不是这样吗 ？provider listener， 应该是缺一些 required provider。required change， 然后 provider 是这个 init provider， 叫 provider 有点拗口了。然后呢，这种方式我都不喜欢写太多哈，就这样就好。OK。Ctrl 斜线吗？我要怎么叫出那个点 ？Ctrl 点，我怎么叫出 debug console？Shift Command Y ，Shift Command U Y，Output U Y， 这是什么 ？Ctrl 点。加点，太复杂。它有没有 reload 啊？有，加一个 read 吧，证明一下这个家伙有没有叫起来。OK。摆明就没被叫起来啊！整个重启。OK， 这里印出来了。这个 debug console 的 highlight 的字真的是有够长。 那叫 search 吗？不好找debug， 它叫做 debug console。font size， 搜寻一下。Terminal， 是 debug console search selected color。Coloring your output。是，这个到底要怎么看呢、啊？救命啊！先不管这个好了。对啊，这里都没有有提到 console 的 color 吗？没有。OK， 我们已经证明这一段是有跑道的了，那就先休息一下，这课先 mark 结束，然后 code commit 一下。
Alright, so now
先始作 init page 跟 splash page。跟 init 的，这算是 init 的架构。Use provider for app init。OK。好，哎，桌子差点垮掉。休息的时候，我应该会。 OK， 回来啦，继续。我很好奇，这个台平常应该没有人在看的吧？一个就是我自己。
Now we have this initialization provider, which is going to run whenever the app first runs. We're calling check and update auth status from it, which is going to set the authentication state to either authenticated or unauthenticated. But we are still not doing anything with these states because depending on whether the user is authenticated or not, we want to navigate either to the sign-in page or to the start repos page.
重点来了哦。
So in addition
根据登录的状态 ，App 要去到不同的路径。
to having a provider listener for the initialization provider, which is not even really a listener, it's just here to trigger the initialization provider, we also need to have another listener in here, which is going to now truly listen to the auth notifier. So again, in your case, you're going to have a consumer widget here, which will have a widget reference, ref, and from the build method you are going to call ref.listen and then pass in the auth notifier and then a function which will pass you the
value
state, the auth state, and you will write the logic inside of here. However, for me, again, I will just comment this out, I have to do it a bit differently. Let's actually leave this consumer widget in so that you know what's up in the future. So for me now, I want to wrap this material app in yet another provider listener. So wrap with a widget, provider listener. The provider will be the auth notifier provider, which will make it listen to the state of this auth notifier. And on change is going to pass us the context and the value. Let's rename the value to state because that's what it is. It's of type auth state, which we need to actually specify here. So we are listening to auth state. Let's import auth state, and here we go. You will also need to specify auth state on the listen method then, like this, if you're watching this in the future. And what do we want to do from here whenever the auth state changes? Well, we are going to say state.map, because this is a freeze union, so we can use the map function. But actually we're not going to say map, but only maybe map, because we are not really interested in all of the states. In here, we are only interested in the authenticated and unauthenticated states. So if it's initial or failure state, we are not going to deal with that over here. We're going to deal with it elsewhere. So here in our else, we're just going to ignore all of the other states. But in case the state is authenticated, we're going to get it in this function. Let's just give it a name underscore. So this underscore now is the authenticated state. And if the user is already authenticated, we will want to navigate to the start repos page, which is sort of the home page of our repo viewer app. So how can we do that? Usually when you want to navigate with the autoroute package, you say autorouter dot auth context to obtain it from this widget tree above. But here you can immediately see a problem, because we are calling autorouter auth context to retrieve it from somewhere above in the widget tree, but the autorouter is actually declared below in the widget tree, because a router is sort of a part of the material app. So we cannot possibly get the autorouter using this inherited widget syntax. So how can we obtain it then? Well, thankfully, we actually have an instance of app router inside of our app widget class, because that's simply what we need to do if we want to use it. So we can access directly this class field. So let's say app router, and now we can say push and pop until, and we are going to push the start repos route. So start repos route, let's make it into a constant like that, right? And we also need to specify some sort of a predicate, because we are pushing and popping then on
predicates.位词
until this predicate is true. And this predicate will never be true, it will actually be always false. So this predicate is a function which passes you a route object.
就是把
And
所
this
有
route object
的
can
把所有它 predicate 这个参数是要决定哪一些路径要被 pop 吧 ，pop until。那它把所有都回传 true， 就是先前所有的路径都会被 pop 掉。
normally be used to, for example, see route dot settings dot name, and you can check if the name of the route which is currently being popped, or we are attempting to pop it rather, if this name is, for example, the splash page or splash route dot name, route name. If we were to do this, the popping of routes, and to pop a route means that it's no longer shown. In this case, it would stop at the splash route, so the splash would still remain to be shown. But we actually want to pop all of the routes, so let's say
true,
false.
false.
This will ensure that all of the routes are popped, and
都不要
only
留的
the
意思。
start repos route is pushed, so start repos route will be the only one present there, so the user will not be able to navigate back to the splash page, because it would look silly, right? If we are here, which currently doesn't work because we have broken everything here. Let's hard restart. Here we go. Hard restart always helps. So it would be silly if the user, after checking if the user is signed in, and we find out that he is, and we take that user to the start repositories so that the start repositories are displayed, and it would be silly if the user could then just press the back button and navigate back to the splash page. I mean, it doesn't make sense. The splash page should never be able to navigate back to it. And that's why we are popping all of the routes, so that only the start repos route will be present, and navigating back will not be an option. Also, another case which we want to handle here.
这边已经够多了。好，看一下。现在是要在这里加上一个 widget， 叫做provider listener， 是吗？确认一下。对，然后它要 listen 的状态是 auth state， 然后会缺几个，一样哦，它需要一个 provider， 这个应该是 auth notify provider， change 的时候听 context 跟 state。然后我们只听 change 嘛 ，state 点 maybe map， 还有一个 else。除了我们关心的之外，我比较喜欢的写法是这样 else 就空的嘛，然后如果是我们要听的，那就是那个叫什么状态啊 ？Authenticated， 就做什么事情。OK， add router push and pop until， 它去的路径叫做这样 start repos route。其他的路径都推掉，是吧？用不到这个东西，这样比较好看一点。OK， 然后现在这个应该是起不来了，所以我需要把它整个怎么重启？然后 restart， 底下我看到的状态啊。没有状态进来，这就比较奇怪。应该有去跑这个啊。把结束。把整个状态印出来。它没有去跑，所以是这里没有去跑。对。sign in 是 false， 所以是 unauthenticated 的 ，OK， 这样子重启之后就有去跑道了。这些 log 就先留着，继续看下去。
Here is unauthenticated, so this is also going to pass us a state, this time unauthenticated state. And in here we are going to do a very similar thing.
Login.
But instead of start repos route, we are going to push the sign-in route.
刚有个东西没看。Push and pop until. 都没文件。对嘛？所以他先 pop until， 然后再 push。OK。Authenticated 的状态下，add router 去到。也是一样 push and pop until。 log in， 让它sign in page route。一样是推到底吧。应该没有去成功，所以整个再重启。OK， 这一页应该是sign in page。OK， 发现登录状态是 false， 所以就 unauthenticated， 然后这边就听到的是状态改变嘛，是 unauthenticated， 就利用 app router route 到 sign in route。
And here it's even more important to pop everything because yes, this unauthenticated thing will run when on the first launch of the app we check the auth status, and if the user is not authenticated, this will run. But this will also run at other times, namely when the user signs out. If I open up the already finished app, it will become clear. So think about this. We are in these star repositories route and we actually search for a repository, let's say Flutter. So we can now go back to the start repositories, right? So we are sort of 2 routes deep. Start and then this search routes. And when the user signs out from here, it would be silly if the user could navigate back to see the star repositories or even the searched ones. It doesn't make sense. The user is signed out already, so there cannot be no back navigation. And that's why it's very important to pop all of the routes whenever the user becomes unauthenticated, whether that is on the first
route。这边最好是看一下几个基本的用法。今天稍早讲到一个写了这个 app router 之后，它 build runner 会帮我们产生一个点 gr， 那这个是这一个 package 做的 auto route generator。然后要让这个可以 work， 同时你也要安装 build runner， 然后这些都是放在 dev dependency， 也就是说是开发时候需要有在场的套件。那真正把这个 app 送到手机上的时候，要 dependency 的是看这个 dependency， 这些是不会被送到手机上去的。那基本用法是先写一个这个 template at material auto router replace in route name， 这些细节不看。它这里做了2个页面，2个路径嘛，一个是 book list， 一个是 book detail。然后初始路径是这个 book list。Using part builder extends先不看，我想要看怎么样来来去去的。设定完成的时候，就是在 Material App 点 Router 这边，把 Router Delegate 跟 Route Information Parser 从产生出来的那个 code 卷产生出来的 class 里面指定过去。Generated routes，if the declared route has children, auto route will children 是这个吧？我看一下刚刚是怎么 declare。不知道 children 是怎么设定。Initial children。OK， 如果有 children， 那你在建构这个路径的时候要nested navigation。看不太懂。Navigating between screen， 用这个 app router of context 去取得 router。嗯？没有。
我那个拔得下来装不回去。
找，好呗。
我不知道那个要用什么，我2只手卡不上去，不知道怎么装哎。你之前有装过吗？好，回来了。刚刚说要看 auto route 怎么用嘛，关好。
它先 push 了一个叫 books 的路径啊，你可以用2种方式 push 都可以。当然是这种比较好哈，因为这个写死的，如果它里面路径有改，这里扣也要跟着改。然后它 replace remove last entry push provided。叫 replace navigate 呢 pop until provided route if it already exists, else add it to the stack. push all replace all replace all 是什么 ？Like providing a completely new stack as it rebuild all。所以其实我们那边可以用 replace all 会比较单纯一点吧。Like providing a completely new stack。Pop last page pop until keep popping routing until predicate is satisfied. Predicate 断言，就是到第2个参数回传 true 啦，不是第2个啦，到这个 predicate 这个参数回传 true。那这个参数何时会是 true， 它就去检查 route 的 name 是不是我要的那个路径，也就是把这个路径以上的都剔除掉。简化版。居然没有我们那个我们用的这个push and pop until。真的，这个 method 大概被淘汰掉了。感觉我们这里要用的应该是，想一下，先 pop until， 然后全部都拿掉，所以基本上就是 replace all 了。基本上就是这一个吧。List of routes， 所以它可能需要一个这个东东。传参数就是在 new 那个 route 的时候，可以把它这样传进去。有没有那个 query string 的概念啊？这个是 argument。pass argument, pass parameter。在 page 里面可以像这样子 at pass parameter ID 把它抓出来。 query parameter. At a query param.好，这个我们继续。
Initialization provider run, or when the user actually signs out by pressing that sign out button in the app. If I go back to the app which we are currently developing, whoops, right here, and I hot restart it, what we should see is that we are now going to navigate to the sign in route. Because of course, I mean, we are not signed in because we have not yet implemented that logic. So let's hot restart, and as you can see, we are taken to a black screen which should be the sign in page, so we can test it out pretty easily. We have multiple options how to test it out, but the simplest one is to go to the sign in page and again to just return a scaffold which should make the background white. And sure, it is white, so we know we are inside of the sign-in page. And just like that, you now know how to perform initialization inside an app widget, and also how to navigate to different pages or routes depending on the authentication state.
OK， 整理一下 call。print 的地方就让它 print 吧。它会说正在 Initial Provider， 然后按 Authenticated State。Sign Force 这一边就读那个了。先把这些code整理一下吧。 因为这样已经完成了初始状态下要做的事情。我自己会习惯整理一下。现在都不用 sort 了，看起来他有帮我们 sort 过了。应该算是 listen to。 Initial state, auth state, change route according to auth state. 下一课，下一课。
It's cool that we can determine whether or not the user is signed in, and then to navigate to a proper page for authenticated and unauthenticated state. But how can we actually authenticate the user? So we already have the infrastructure layer completed, the domain layer completed, and application layer completed for the auth feature, but still we are missing the presentation layer implementation, which is equally as important. In the case of the auth feature, the presentation is very important because it's actually a part of the process, since we're going to be using a web view. So let's build this sign-in page. We're already seeing it in the simulator because we have navigated over there since the user is not signed in. So it's going to have a scaffold at its root, and then the body of the scaffold is going to be a column.
看你怎么这么耗电啊 到吗？哦 ，OBS 超耗电的，好呗。
And this column will contain children that are going to be the GitHub logo again. So as we already know, we can show a GitHub logo by using an icon. So icon, and it will be from the material design icons. So MDI icons.github, right? Looking something like this. So you cannot even see it properly because it's hidden in this corner of the device. So that's not great. To sort of offset
为什么
the
它长这样？是因为sign in page core auth presentation sign page scaffold 到底是一个 color children 另一个 icon MDI icons真的埋在了这个 status bar 里面，奇怪。
corners of the device and these notches, which many devices nowadays have, we can use a safe area. So inside a scaffold in the body, let's wrap the column with a new widget, safe area. And this is literally going to put all of the widgets inside a area which is
OK， 几乎现在这年头的手机，所有的东西最好都包在 safe area 里面。Reference center 改成 safe area， 看一下哦。准，断腰掉下来。
safe from any curves and notches and so on. But still, this is not what we want to do here, right? What we want to do is to center this GitHub icon, and let's first make it bigger. So let's make it size 150. And let's also open up Devtools, which we can do from this button up here when the app is running. We can open Devtools, and let's press over here on this icon to show debug paint. So we're now going to see on the screen the individual positioning of the widgets and how they are laid out. So we can
看怎么有这条线。
see that the whole column itself, I hope you can see it on video as well, is just moved to the side. So we want to center this column, so let's wrap it with a center widget, which we cannot do for some reason. Very interesting.
他要把这个 column，OK， 现在我看一下我的画面，这两条蓝色的线应该就是代表这个 column， 上面这个框框代表 icon， 然后我们想要把整个 column 搬到 save area 的中间来，所以要把它 wrap center，OK。这个 center 指的是这个 column 被搬到 center 来。我看一下。好，看下接下来
And now we
想
can
做
do
什
it,
么。
thankfully. So let's wrap it with a center widget, and now it's centered horizontally. So we have just centered the column, and to center things within the column, we're going to
column
specify
main axis.
the main axis alignment, which of course in the case of column, the main axis is vertical. So we're going to say main
Center.
axis alignment dot center.
OK， 这是在这个 column 里面的
Alright, let's actually close this
主
widget
轴
inspector
自轴
panel, just obstructing our view quite a bit. And now we'll want to have a text inside of this column as well, which will say text welcome to repo viewer. By default, text is going to be very small, looking like this. To make it look bigger, we can specify the style, which is a text style. And we can either define it like this by inputting the font size ourselves. So font size is, I don't know, 48, and this will become huge. But usually, instead of specifying styling like this for a text style and many other things, you should prefer to use styles from a theme. So the Material App widget provides us with a theme, which we have currently not modified in any way. We're going to get to that later on in this module. But even the default material theme contains some nice presets for the text style. So let's use one of those presets, which we can obtain by calling theme.offContext. And now we want to go for the text theme .headline 3. And this is going to look like this. But this doesn't look good at all, because we want the text to have a line break between welcome to and repo viewer. That's the first thing. And to add a line break, we can just use the new line character, which is \n. So now it looks like this. And let's also align the text itself to the center. So we're going to say text align on this text widget is going to
center.
be text align dot center. Nice. Let's add some minor spacing between this text and the icon. So we're going to add a size box here, which will have height of 16. So add the const modifier, and let's also make this icon constant. And now for the important stuff, which is the button which the user can actually press to be taken to a page which will show the web view with the sign-in form directly from GitHub, and then that GitHub web page will redirect to the redirect URI, which will contain the authorization code, which we can exchange for the access token in which we are interested right from the start. And this button will be an elevated button, which takes
text theme 点 headline 3 style 冒号，这个就不能是 constant 的 ，constant 很烦 ，style， 然后 align， 这是来 center。OK， 把它加了一个高度是16的间隔 ，size 的 box height 16.0。这什么颜色
？Takes in onPress, which is a function, and also a child, which usually is a text.
登录按钮
So
吧。
let's do that. It's going to be a text saying sign in. And let's actually turn off this outline. So let's open up the widget inspector again, and let's press this button, hide debug paint. Alright, so this button now looks kind of funny. We do not want it to look like that. Sign in button should be green, and it should stretch to the whole width of the column. So first let's make it stretch. To make things stretch within a column, we're going to set the cross axis alignment on the column to be cross axis alignment dot stretch.
这边我稍微讲一下好了，因为我想说，既然要录这个 Flutter 开发的影片，一些稍微基本的东西也可以提。就是关于一个 column， 它很重要的两个属性，就是一个是主轴的 alignment， 就是在主轴上，以 column 来说，主轴就是这样 vertical 的嘛，怎么放东西？如果没有给的话 ，default 只是放在从start 的最开始放。那我们放 center， 我们这个主轴置放的主轴是置中，所以东西都会从正中央开始放，它从正中央开始往两侧去展开。然后现在要调的是横轴 ，cross axis 就是主轴的另一个轴就是横轴。这个它之所以要这样命名是有意义的，因为如果是 row 的话 ，row 是横的嘛，那 row 的主轴就是横，就是 vertical， horizontal， 然后 row 的 cross axis 横轴就是纵的，就是 vertical。OK， 所以 column 是直的、纵的，所以它的 cross axis 它的横轴就是横的、水平的。现在控制水平的东西怎么放？那如果不动的话，我记得它应该是 center 吧。那如果有现在像特别设定 stretch， 它就会把里面的每个东西都撑到最大。看一下。
Just like that,
okay.
This button now stretches. We do not want it to stretch all that much though, so let's add some padding from the side of this column. So let's 这个 stretch 怪怪的，我看一下。首先，它加了一个 button， 叫做 elevated button。那这东西需要两个参数，一个就是里面要显示的文字。一个是按下去以后要干嘛？现在什么事都不做。为什么我的一开始就长这么大？啊，不是。sign in， 如果我用成是 cross axis alignment stretch，
它的意思是每个 child 都会把自己撑到最大，因为它有多少空间，它就用多少，这不是我们要的。通常会加，讲一下，我刚的想法是说，没有这一行的时候，那你就第三个最小的这个把自己撑到